Hello, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Welcome to this SpinCheck special right here on 6 News. As the federal election looms closer, there is a lot of talk about how minor party and independent candidates could potentially dominate the House of Representatives if they are elected. But there's a bit less talk regarding the Senate. That's despite many candidates running for the Senate this election on all sides of politics. We spoke to just a few of these people. First, to Steve Keen from the New Liberals. We caught up with their leader Victor Klein twice in the past year, and now we've spoken to one of their candidates. Here's some of what Keane told us.
We really are backed by people who are experts in their field. So I'm a professor of economics and a contrarian at that, so I'm a critic of mainstream economics. You have people like Richard Hames, who's our foreign affairs advisor, two people who helped me write who I helped write the climate change policy, who are themselves climate scientists. So we're basing ourselves on genuine experts.
Now, we also asked Keane about a post from TNL leader Victor Klein that claimed his party would be in government by 2028 with the Greens in opposition. Is it too ambitious?
Not in the circumstances we're in. I mean, I'm one of the areas that I'm specialising in is climate change, in the economics of climate change. And I recommend a paper, if you look at me, of mine, by the way, called The Appallingly Bad Neoclassical Economics of Climate Change. Now, I know just how bad the research of economists has been on this front, how much they've downplayed the dangers, not really understanding what it means. And both Liberal and Labor are supping from that cup when they say let's reduce our carbon output by 38% by 2030, 42%, whatever the Labor Party claims. These are treating it as a distant, minor problem. It is not. It is a very close, major problem. So the only parties which have got any handle on just how serious this position is are ourselves and the Greens. And it's not a question of if, it's when we start seeing climate catastrophes that are so big, even the climate change deniers and the Liberal Party aren't going to be able to wile their way out of it. When that starts happening, the two parties of relevance will be ourselves and the Greens.
But then if you're talking about some similarities between TNL and the Greens, then it'd be odd that the Greens would then be in opposition under this prediction. I mean, we're talking 6 years. The New Liberals, a party only formed, in I think you said 2019, would be in government with, again, the Greens in opposition and the Conservative Labor Party apparently merging what was the Liberal and Labor, getting 6 seats. That, I mean, is that really realistic?
Comment?
That's exactly what Victor said.
Victor does put some interesting embellishments forward on occasions, but I think it could be right. Now, like for example, you're saying what's the possibility of a party that's formed a mere 3 years ago being in power in 6 years' time? Well, I'll say one word answer to you. Not that I particularly like his policies overall. Macron. Okay? Macron formed in France and won office the same year. It's a different political system, of course, different issues too. But it is possible for a new party to come along and say, we're going to wipe out the old ones because they have got themselves completely locked in a corner.
After that, we spoke to another Steve Beattie from the Australian Democrats. Now, some of our viewers may know that the Democrats were fairly dominant in the Senate only a few decades ago, but their vote collapsed at the 2004 and 2007 elections. Now they're hoping to regain some of those Senate seats. Here's some of what Beattie told us.
I think it's fair to say we've been in the wilderness for a while. Leo, and there was a lot going on during that period. I think you can see in our vote through the 2004 and 2007 elections, there was a period of decline there, and we've spent that time since then taking a look at who we are and how we operate in particular, and making sure that we're putting in place strong structures, strong membership. Membership has been growing significantly over the last few years. We're making sure that we've got good policies that are well researched, well evidenced. And we think we've got a good chance in this election, especially when there is so much focus on those matters of integrity and accountability.
And I guess there are a lot of minor parties running this year, both in the House of Representatives and where you're running the Senate. And quite a few of them talk about integrity, talk about a federal anti-corruption commission and issues similar to that. How can the Democrats actually cut through and be the one that voters will turn to instead of just any party that is promoting a federal ICAC or strong integrity values, etc.?
I think one of the things for us, Leo, is that we have that history. So we spent a long time, 30 years as part of the Senate process. A lot of the reforms about the way the Senate actually operates and a lot of the measures of scrutiny and accountability that are in place in the Senate had their beginnings with the Australian Democrats. So we've got that legacy and that history of doing something concrete about it.
Next up, one of the youngest candidates this election, Drew Pavlu from the Democratic Alliance, a party he founded. He's well known for his criticisms of the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. He launched his party last year, running in a number of House of Representatives seats and Senate seats this election. We caught up with him.
I've got to do something. I can't just go back to a normal life, even though I'd probably be objectively happier not being a candidate, as it's very stressful forming your own political party and trying to run everything on your own with no money as a young person. But for me, it's not really about my happiness in life. It's not really about, my personal advancement or anything really. It's just about, here's this cause. There are 1 million people in concentration camps. Australia's top largest trading partner is unfortunately doing business with the regime committing genocide. And I want to try and raise awareness about that. I want to raise awareness about how the status quo is failing many young people as well. I mean, for example, with housing affordability, I think the problem of failed neoliberalism and CCP interference is actually one and the same.
But when we brought up one meme that he shared regarding Liberal MP Gladys Liu that raised questions about her links to Nick Zhao, a man who claimed he was offered $1 million by a suspected Chinese spy to infiltrate the Australian Parliament, he defended his actions even though a coroner did list a cause of death.
Listen, Leonardo, I appreciate you raising this point. Firstly, I want to make clear that I'm not accusing Gladys Liu of being behind his death. I'm just simply pointing out that I think it's very...
And we also do point out, you did not make this meme. It's one that has been shared widely before.
Yeah. See, I'm not claiming Gladys Liu to be behind anyone's death. I'm just simply saying it's very untoward and I think very inappropriate that someone who... Gladys Liu was photographed multiple times with Nick Zhao at fundraisers at her own home, and Nick Zhao came forward, and I think his claims seemed quite credible. He was offered $1 million by an unnamed Chinese businessman to run for the Liberal Party in the seat of Chisholm and infiltrate the Parliament. This was a story that was covered by international media all across the world. It was a very, very substantial scandal. And I think the fact that a young man in his 30s winds up dead in a Melbourne hotel room, no history of drug use apparently, and I think it took about 6 months for the coroner to determine that it was a suicide. So
can I just? I'm sorry to interrupt. But I just want to circle back to what we were.
No, I just was about to circle back. I just was saying, if you can understand from my position as someone who has been at the receiving end of death threats because of the Chinese government's pressure, having Uyghur friends who have been targeted in Australia, having Chinese friends who have been tailed and harassed, it's obviously something that I think it's not unreasonable that I would have suspicions.
Nick dies suddenly in March, no identified cause. He's in his 30s. No identified cause. That's false. We know it was ruled as suicide.
I believe it was not identified as a suicide for at least months after that.
September 2020 per, I know it's a weird source for a journalist to use, but per Wikipedia citing the age, September 2020. But regardless, I mean, there is an identified cause, and that was in September 2020, and now it's April 2022, and you're sharing that meme.
Listen, Leo. Obviously, you're right to ask this question, but I actually don't think that the coroner's conclusion there is as hard and fast as appears.
Late last year, we also caught up with the Liberal Democrat's David Limbrick, who at the time was a member of the Victorian Parliament. Now he's resigned from that role and is standing as a Victorian Senate candidate. We asked him why he made the switch and how the Liberal Democrats can potentially cut through to voters who may just vote for any so-called Freedom Party, such as the United Australia Party and Pauline Hanson's One Nation.
Look, throughout the last 2 years, throughout the pandemic, one of the things that I've noticed in Victoria is that we've had a real a real appetite for people who defend liberty, which is what our party's about in Victoria. But one of the things that we've felt really let down by, and I think lots of Victorians have felt let down by, is that we haven't had any voices defending liberty in the federal parliament. Very, very few, in fact, and none from Victoria. And so I was convinced that, you know, we need more voices for liberty that are defending us in the federal parliament, and that's why I was convinced by my party and supporters to put up my hand and run for the Senate. It's clear there'll be some Greens candidates, possibly One Nation will be elected, possibly others. I'd like to see Liberal Democrats senators elected. It's also possible that we might cause an upset in a lower house seat. We'll wait and see what happens there. We're not claiming that we're going to form government, though, but we do think that having our voice in Parliament, either at an upper or lower house level, can help change the conversation and push the government in a direction that is not as intrusive on people's liberties in a more free market and free society.
And finally, Julie Ann Finney, the mother who led a push for a royal commission into veteran suicide. She's now standing for the local party in South Australia. We asked her to explain who they are.
The local party, Leo, formed to support independents that want to run for Parliament, and they have a constitution, but there's no party line that I have to follow, which was great because there's things I agree with and things that I disagree with. So they got in touch with me, and I absolutely jumped at the chance.
When did you make the decision to, run? Had you been considering it for a while?
I think really mid last year, I decided that it might be an option to get my voice out there. I was being heard, but not loud enough. And at that time, I also realised that there were literally hundreds of thousands that needed to be heard. I was just one. And where better to have your voice heard than in Parliament.
And we'll have more from Julie Ann Finney, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Of course, there were plenty of things said in all these interviews that we weren't able to air due to time. If you'd like to see more, let us know in the comments by using that hashtag 6newsau or email your feedback to contact@6newsau.com. SpinCheck will be back next Friday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. For now, though, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. I'll see you next time.